since we've been talking about JSX and Star Trek and equipment and things like that, we should segue into tabletop games as far as how a DM, and even actually how a DM, but also how players can kind of work on. That's one thing that's always that's always escaped me is how loot and equipment is. Oh, not just equipment, but also spells and things like that. Like, how do you work that stuff into games? I know we actually have a game night coming up pretty soon, and one of the things we might actually do is we might actually do a D&D campaign. But that's one thing I always been interested in is like how I know like Star Trek. I mean, that's all programmed into the game. Like that's something that's already coded into the game. Like what drops you're gonna get or things like that. Same thing. Games like Destiny and like the Division, you get random equipment, but the equipment's gonna be like a machine gun or a shotgun, things like that. Like, how do you deal with that in tabletop RPGs? Like, is it something like you have a stack of cards somewhere, or like, can you make stuff up on the fly? But also, how do you deal with maybe giving somebody a really, really powerful sword that kind of breaks the game?
Commonly with most role playing games, and this is like all the popular ones like Rifts, Dungeons and Dragons, Shadowrun, games like that. What you want to do is every weapon or piece of equipment is assigned a level, and so you have like maybe level 3 type weapons or level 4 type weapons, some kind of tiered weapon system like that. And like you tend to, if it's like you tend to want to like give them magic weapons or abilities that are appropriate to that level. And in some cases, some games can actually, you can improve upon that. The weapons actually can level up along with your character, so that like just because that's a unique type of weapon. Because most of the weapons that you start with are pretty standard. I mean, if you're playing D&D, you're gonna have longsword. You're not gonna have like the Master Sword that Link used in The Legend of Zelda. You're just gonna have like a typical sword, and then how like a good game master will assign it is that you'll be able to find it in some kind of dungeon, or there'll be like a reward set up if you do something like you battle these like brawny little orcs that are a tad higher level than most typical orcs. And that way, when they like win that battle, you'll have that reward, and you can use that against like whatever boss or like last confrontation or encounter that he has in that dungeon.
I mean, would you also suggest DMs also because they're planning the campaign, also plan ahead for like future encounters? So let's say in the early part of the campaign, the users are going up against let's say they're going up against a lot of demons, but no one in the party really has any kind of offensive spell or weapon for demons specifically, or even armor that protects against magic damage. As a DM, would you suggest they plan ahead, maybe later on down the line after they do some kind of exhausting encounter, they all get kind of demon specific armor and weapons to kind of face that threat?
I think one of the weirdest, like most difficult thing is that like sometimes when you're playing a role playing game, you don't have that option to like just wander back to a store and like buy what you need kind of thing. Get like stock up on med kits and Phoenix Downs or whatever type of video game role playing game that you actually play. Sometimes you just have to keep on going forward, and like it would if you have a good game master, maybe he throws some drops at you. Like I think there was actually one game that we played with in D&D where I believe your wife actually found a teleportation spell, and now typically you would use that teleportation spell to teleport your players, but in the case of like what we ended up doing is that we ended up in a dungeon and we actually encountered a large dragon. And rather teleporting ourselves, we decided to teleport a dragon. And I believe the game master wasn't really into that because he wanted us to fight it, but we were just kind of in the mode of we don't want to fight a dragon because I think our character classes were thieves and...
It was a thief. You were I think you were you were a fighter, but you weren't like a strong fighter. No, you were a fighter, but you didn't really have any armor. My wife she was a mage, and I was a thief. So we had no tank essentially.
Yeah, like I mean, I could deal a good amount of damage, but I mean, obviously, like we couldn't like it wasn't going to be a war with attrition with this thing because the attrition would be the dragon kills us. At least that in our head, it's really different when you're playing tabletop because you don't know unless you've read the actual monster manual before the DM. You don't really know what you're up against. So when you see dragon, you just kind of say, "Uh-oh, well, this is going to be a hard fight." So, and I think that's the key is that like you want to get into battles where you think outside the box, and we definitely did think outside the box. We set up the distractions, and we led this dragon to teleport into the teleportation spell, and apparently, like we teleported him into some like sort of icy realm or whatever, which is great because he's a dragon and he shoots fire.
Yeah, you said. I remember. Yeah, the DM wasn't really too into that, but yeah, we definitely had to improvise. I know we also had one of those moments where we were fighting an owl bear.
Oh yeah, we fought an owlbear, and I wanted to tame the owlbear, and I wanted to be an owlbear. I wanted to ride the owlbear, so I was the owlbear rider. And he was just like, "Well, I'm not really into that." I'm like, "Just do it, come on, man. Do I just let me roll?" And I remember rolling a very high roll. I'm not sure if it was a natural 20, but it was something very close.
I think you rolled like an 18, and his requirement was, he pretty much relented and said, "All right, fine. If you get like a 17, I'll give it to you." And you ended up rolling, I think, 18 or 19. Now that was one of the things that kind of turned me and my wife off. Was he was very much of the, "Oh, I don't know about that," and I know we talked about that before. That's one of the big hangups with tabletop games.
I mean, if you can give out these sort of unusual prizes that like you can't really get in a video game, I mean, I don't think I can ride an owl and Neverwinter, owlbear in Neverwinter. Owlbears are part owl, part bear, and I don't think we could like use a teleportation spell for the explicit fact to teleport a giant monster into another location rather than just fighting it and like just like we teleport him and take his loot. Like the loot ended up being gold. Like let me tell you guys, don't just give out gold because if you don't stop by towns as often, then you're not spend. It's like you're working so much but you're not spending the money, kind of thing. And like it's. Give out these unusual kind of prizes, and like you'll engage your player to play more because you're kind of giving them something that they can't get in a video game, like riding an owlbear or teleporting, using a spell to teleport a dragon rather than the actual player themselves. You're actually awarding them with these sort of unusual things that they wouldn't be able to do outside of a computer game, and you're continually kind of making them think outside the box. And I think that could be cool. I think it challenges the DM. But if the DM just wants to have like a war of aggregates, I mean, there's no point in playing a tabletop game.
Yeah, and going back to giving away unique items, you can even do it where you give them goofy items, like you give them the shoes or the pants of no pooping, where you can walk around and you don't have to take a shit. Like you just shit your pants and there's a vortex that sucks all the poop out of your butt and it goes somewhere. So like you never have to stop for a bathroom break. Stuff like that, yeah. Stuff like that makes it fun. I mean, your campaign doesn't have to be super serious. Like you have joke stuff like that. Like we teleported the goddamn dragon. What if the dragon got teleported into like an outhouse? One thing I always wanted to do in a tabletop game, if we would have kept going, actually that campaign probably would have been brutal. I probably would have hated myself. One thing I always wanted to do in a tabletop RPG was you get all that gold. What do you spend gold on? You buy yourself a house or you buy yourself a car. Well, a cart, a horse-drawn cart. But what if like you took it kind of like that Key and Peele skit where you don't go adventuring, you just go to the bar and you want to meet some wenches. You're like, I want to meet wenches. That's all I want to do with all my gold. Like, why do I want to fight? I just want to stay in this bar, drink, and meet wenches. Or stuff, stuff like that. What would you suggest? Maybe prevent people from maybe accumulating too many good items, or as far as kind of like making sure whatever you hand out doesn't break the campaign.
Handing out money, I don't think is too big of a deal in some cases because you can always change the narrative. as long as you're changing the narrative to something that actually will involve the player a bit more, so you can actually make them go bankrupt. You can make like a king come by and like he takes all your money, and then that king becomes your enemy, and then you want to hunt him down and stop him. But then you have
I would totally be down for that campaign. Like if you start off as you do like a corporate America where the king bankrupt you, so now you and a bunch of like pissed off heroes go on a heist to like take all his money back, and you play the long con. You don't want to kill the guy, you want to ruin him.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. It's not okay. Now you go to this dungeon and you must save this maiden. I mean, that's a good like goal, but like you want to get to the point where you want to change up these goals so it's a little bit more crazier. You want to get into that point of involving your players to do something, so you can take away all their gold, but then make them have this vendetta against the person who took away their gold. Give them a little opportunity to kind of like have either win their money back or exact their revenge, but not the typical way of like let's go fight him, because obviously you can do that any time in the game. Make sure that like the carrot at the end of that stick is something they like. Now in terms of like what you mentioned of like breaking the game, is that you don't want to really give them something too powerful. You do want to give them something that like might impress them. For example, I was in a game called Palladium. It's kind of a Dungeons and Dragons style type game. Takes place in sort of like a medieval setting with like a lot of fantasy elements. I was awarded a sword that could shoot lightning from basically you could call lightning from the sky, and it can actually attack your enemy. The lightning would just strike your enemy, and it would be in such a way that like the bonus to strike to hit a person was really high because it was coming from the sky and it was kind of directed like that. So I had like very little chance to miss, but the thing is that I could only use it 3 times per day. So I couldn't use it all the time. So I had to pick my moments. And like, you like the player will think in those terms. They'll think, okay, well, I probably want to like have one blast just in case till the end, but I kind of want to use it right now. So if we, use it in a fight, I'll use it against some enemy and just to see how much it does. And like maybe I'll use it again if we're desperate, but I want to save one for the last fight, just in case we need to take on someone. And like the range was unlimited basically if I was in line of sight. So it made me think, okay, I have 3 times to use it. I don't want to use it like haphazardly. So let me pick my spots. There was another thing like there was this like sort of chaos axe that this is the same game. It was a chaos axe, and I found it, but every time I touched it, it would actually like shock me. And like the idea was it was a chaos axe, so the only people who could use it, since I was like a knight and I was sort of like a scrupulous person, you had to have a scoundrel take it, and like we had one, and he lifted it, and like he could use this sort of badass axe that could do quite a bit of damage. So like you can even like fine tune it to a character that's involved in the campaign. It doesn't have to be something that everyone can use. It can be fine tuned towards a person's alignment. Don't just think character class. Think their alignment. Think their like they're neutral goods or neutral evil, like all those things that you see in like Dungeons and Dragons and I guess internet memes.
There's no good and evil. There's just the guy with the shotgun.
Exactly. And yeah, you just like give them like sort of these interesting like sort of upgrades to their character that's not that that maybe can be used by one character but not by another. So and then like sometimes like players get into fights like, well, I'm just going to take it and sell it, which I think is sort of garbage, because then you're just kind of putting the party in jeopardy. Because if like people die in the party, then
someone taking their ball and going home, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Someone taking their ball and going home. No one wants to play. Like I always like run into this. Like there's always this one player who thinks that he's like sort of the main character of the story. And so he tries to buff himself with like all these like things with one-hit kills and stuff like that. That's so unexciting to me. Like I'd rather have a character with like a bit of flaws here and there, and like maybe he's really good at one thing but really bad at another thing. That's why you have another player to kind of like compensate for that. Or if you guys both have those flaws, you have to work together to overcome that. If you're a thief that does, you're a pair of thieves that don't, can't kill people in one shot, you guys will think harder on how to stop an enemy. I mean, obviously, you can have a barbarian and a thief, and one does the dealing, the other one does the distracting. But the idea is to work together as a team, and you could do that. That's definitely working as a team, but also problem solving at the same time. Because again, it is not like a video game where you can always go back to town and start spending money in the middle of an adventure. That is one option that I don't think any Dungeon Master gives you the option to, because it doesn't make sense in sort of that real life setting. There's not a guy in the middle of the dungeon. I mean, I guess you could make one where it's like Resident Evil 4, hello stranger, what are you buying? What are you selling?
How did that guy get to that place without being killed by everyone? That's what always bothered me with that vendor in Resident Evil 4. How is he not getting attacked, but you are? So, that's gonna wrap up our episode for this session. We still have Chuck and Dice and I are still. We actually did receive a game request from Vic Rules 666. He asked us to go ahead and play Divinity, the first Divinity. I know the second Divinity is actually released, or is either coming out or has just been released. But the first Divinity actually was remastered for PS4 and Xbox One. Vic, like I said, Vic Rules 666 asked us to check it out. So for the next episode, we'll actually have a slight, somewhat like an impressions and review. We'll also have some video posted up of us playing it. And we also have Halloween coming up next month. Me and Chuck and Dice are actually going to try to have a special Halloween episode with some horror game playthroughs. I know I want to play, for sure I want to play PT, because that's kind of been on people's minds since the Resident Evil 7 demo came out. I also want to play Outlast. I know that's something I wanted to show Chuck and Dice. I know Chuck and Dice has some horror games he wants to play, and definitely we're going to talk about some good horror movies. Have you guys have any other game requests you'd like to like to see us play? See what our impressions are. Just drop us a line. You can reach us at both of us at our Twitter handles. Sorry, at Chuck and Dice and at Augmented Biscuits. Actually, no, mine's at Incognito Bro, I believe. You can reach us there, or you can also reach us through our YouTube channels.
All right, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.